Trump stands firm on his wish to return tariff dividends to Americans. Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer has his doubts.
We're going to be issuing dividends later on, somewhere prior to, probably in the middle of next year, a little bit later than that, of thousands of dollars for individuals of moderate income, middle income.
It's a very whimsical thing. He's feeling the heat, so he says he's going to send checks to people. First, those checks aren't enough to make up the damage, but second, who knows if they'll ever come.
It's still undetermined whether the Supreme Court will allow Trump's tariff regime to stand. A negative ruling for Trump could mean tariff collections must be returned. The math also doesn't appear to add up for $2,000 checks, in addition to another promise Trump has made regarding the tariff revenues, paying down the debt. Some economists note that any such stimulus could agitate inflation, as Republicans warned when Democrats issued a third round of pandemic relief early in the Biden administration.
Hey everyone, and welcome back. So President Trump is promising moderate income Americans a $2,000 tariff dividend stimulus check. What roadblocks is he going to be facing on the way to getting this in the pockets and in the bank accounts of Americans? In today's video, we are going to be covering everything that you need to know. But before we go ahead and dive into for today, if you would like to receive up to $200 in free stock or $200 in free cash, in a pinned comment below, I will be leaving a link to Robinhood. All you have to do is once you click on that link is just sign up for a free account and then simply link your bank account. You do not even have to make an opening deposit. At that point in time, Robinhood will be sending you one free stock worth all the way up to $200. Okay, so President Donald Trump has doubled and tripled down on these $2,000 stimulus checks. Now, obviously, there are a lot of roadblocks in his way of getting this done. Is he going to be getting enough Republican support? Is he going to be getting enough support from the Democrats? And will the Supreme Court uphold his tariffs? Will they say that it's illegal, or will they say that it's illegal? We have a lot to get into today in today's video. So starting off, does he have support from Chuck Schumer? Well, we just played a video of Chuck Schumer, but once again, in this quote, he said, "I don't even think these checks will come about. It's a very whimsical thing. He's feeling the heat, so he's going to send checks to people. First, those checks aren't enough to make up the damage, but second, who knows if those checks will even come." So just, listening to that statement, even though it's clear Chuck Schumer isn't necessarily a fan of the tariffs and he isn't necessarily a huge fan of the checks that could, possibly go out, he's also not completely dismissing them. How would Chuck Schumer vote? And how would he tell, other Democrats to vote if, a bill reached the Senate that would send Americans $2,000? Would Democrats want to be taking the heat of voting no on stimulus checks that would be going to Americans of $2,000? Obviously, this could actually hurt them come election time. Either way, if they were to vote no on a bill, if they were to block $2,000 checks to being sent to Americans, that could hurt them come election time. But at the same time, it could also help Republicans if Trump was able to send out a check right before the midterm elections with his name on it. So really, for the Democrats, it's pretty much a no-win situation. I would think the Democrats would have to get on board if a bill reached the House or the Senate that would send Americans $2,000 checks. I would think this is something that they would have to support. Now, what about Republicans? According to The Hill, GOP senators worry that Trump's $2K tariff rebate will add too much to debt. So Senate Republicans are wrestling over what to do about President Trump's proposal to give $2,000 tariff dividend checks to most Americans amid widespread Republican concern over the soaring national debt. While GOP lawmakers generally favor sending money back to American taxpayers, there is a strong push among Senate Republicans to use hundreds of billions of dollars the government is collecting from higher tariffs to pay down the huge national debt. Now, such checks could come in handy for lawmakers running in next year's congressional elections, but Republican senators are also worried about the potential impact on the deficit and inflation, which is becoming a major political vulnerability for their party. So, for example, Senate Majority Leader John Thune said he would like to see the revenues collected from the higher tariffs be used to pay down the national debt, which has ballooned to $38 trillion. So we have a lot of Republicans, not just in the Senate, but also in the House, believing that we should be taking 100% of this extra tariff revenue, and instead of issuing $2,000 checks, instead paying down the national debt, which once again is $38 trillion. That is a lot of money to be in debt. $38 trillion. Even $1 trillion is a lot, but we are $38 trillion in debt. Almost $1 trillion of that is being compounded every single year just on interest payments alone. It's completely insane. He said, quote, "I've seen reporting on it and the suggestion about it through instead of Trump's proposal to use tariff revenue to fund rebates for lower and middle income Americans." He said, quote, "I've also heard suggestions that they would apply any tariff revenue to debt repayment, which I think is a really good idea. So we'll look forward and await any suggestions they might have." Now, Senate Republican Policy Committee Chair Shelley Moore Capito said she wants to review Trump's proposal more closely, but she shares Thune's view that the revenues should be used to help reduce the deficit, which is estimated to reach $1.8 trillion on an annual basis in 2025. She said, quote, "I think we need to have a more fleshed out plan. Does it go to everybody?" She said, "I think my preferred route, quite honestly, would be to pay down the debt, but I want to hear out his program." So again, we have another senator there, in addition to Thune, saying that instead of paying out these $2,000 checks, this is a Republican, someone that is in Trump's party, that is, a little bit against the checks, isn't completely against it, isn't completely ruling it out, but instead of sending out $2,000 checks, she would be in favor of instead paying down the national debt. Now, more viewpoints. Senator James Langford, the vice chair of the Senate Republican Conference, said money coming in from tariffs needs to go towards slowing the growth of the debt. He said, quote, "Any income that's coming in from anywhere is reducing the deficit at this point," noting the national debt is nearly $40 trillion. Whatever dividend that would be paid would still add to our debt. Now, Senator Markwayne Mullin, a member of the Senate Republican whip team, said he would not push the tariff rebate plan on his own accord, but said he would follow Trump's lead in the matter. So in that case, we have, Markwayne Mullin saying that even though he would be more so for paying down the national debt if Trump told him to vote a certain way, as in voting for the $2,000 checks, he would follow Trump's lead. How would other Republicans go about doing this? Would they follow Trump's lead and actually voting in favor of a $2,000 check, or would they vote against Trump's wishes and instead have that money go down to pay the national debt? Now, other Republican lawmakers, however, argue the tariff revenues should be sent directly to American families to help them afford the higher cost of goods due to Trump's trade war. Senator Josh Hawley has introduced the American Worker Rebate Act, which would provide rebate checks to workers and families, though a system of direct payments similar to what Congress enacted in 2020 during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. So in Hawley's case, Hawley would obviously be a fan of these $2,000 checks, and right now he actually has a bill in Congress that would send Americans $600 per person, including dependents. So a family of four in his case would be receiving $2,400. So Hawley would be on board with these checks, but are we going to get enough Republicans on board with these checks? Are we going to get enough Democrats on board? And then also, maybe most importantly, is the Supreme Court going to uphold these tariffs, or are they going to strike them down? We'll have to wait and see what happens. But again, leave your thoughts and comments below. What is your personal prediction on this? Do you think it's actually going to end up happening? Do you think it's just going to be another false promise? We will have to wait and see. Leave your thoughts and comments below. But that's all I have for today's video, and I will see you in the next one.